3 years into the war that was supposed to end in 72 hours, the Valdari Empire was dying from within. What had begun as a simple conquest had become an existential threat that consumed resources faster than they could be replaced. Fleet Admiral Xiong-Huan Li stood in the command center of the Grand Alliance Navy, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. 68 worlds had declared independence from the Empire. 43 species had joined the human-led coalition. The Valdari controlled less than half the territory they had ruled when the war began. Status report from Sector 7, announced his communications officer. The Cathan Rebellion has captured the main orbital shipyards. Valdari construction capacity in that region is down by 70%. Xiong-Huan nodded grimly. Each victory brought them closer to their ultimate goal, but the cost in lives and resources was staggering. The humans had learned that liberating a galaxy was even more difficult than defending a single world. President Hyojin Kim reviewed casualty reports in her office on Earth. The numbers were sobering. Over 1 million human soldiers dead, countless alien allies lost, and entire worlds devastated by fighting. The war had transformed humanity from a peaceful spacefaring civilization into something harder and more dangerous. The price of freedom is always high, she said to her advisors. But slavery costs even more, and the bill comes due for generations. The Valdari Empire's response to the growing rebellion was brutal, but predictable. They implemented harsh crackdowns on conquered worlds, executed suspected rebels without trial, and destroyed entire cities to make examples. These actions only created more enemies. General Sang-Min Park commanded the Liberation Army's assault on the fortress world of Draktar. The planet had served as a regional command center for the Empire for over 2 centuries. Its fall would cut Valdari communications across 4 star systems. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory, Sang-Min told his mixed force of human soldiers and alien allies. We're fighting to prove that tyranny always falls to those brave enough to resist it. The assault on Draktar lasted 3 months and became a symbol of everything the war had become. Human engineering created weapons the Valdari couldn't stop. Keithan technology specialists disabled enemy defenses. Zephyrian infiltrators struck at command centers. Dozens of other species contributed their unique abilities to the effort. But the most important weapon was something the Empire still couldn't understand. The absolute determination of people fighting for their freedom. Every species in the coalition had lived under Valdari oppression. They fought not just to win, but to ensure their children would never know slavery. Chief Scientist Yonsu Choi worked in laboratories that barely existed 3 years earlier, developing weapons that existed nowhere in Valdari databases. Her latest creation was a virus that could infect enemy computer systems, turning their own technology against them. The Valdari built their empire using fear as a weapon, she explained to her research team. We're going to tear it down using their own tools. The virus spread through Valdari networks like wildfire, causing ships to target their own allies and defense systems to shut down at critical moments. More importantly, it carried a message that appeared on every infected screen. Freedom cannot be deleted. The Empire's attempts to maintain control were increasingly desperate. They pulled their elite guard units from the capital to fight rebellions on distant worlds. They stripped defenses from core systems to reinforce failing front lines. Each decision weakened them somewhere else. Intelligence reports indicated that the Valdari government was fracturing under the pressure. Regional commanders were making decisions without authorization from the capital. Some were even negotiating secret treaties with local rebel groups, trading recognition for protection from human-led forces. Admiral Xiong-Huan studied tactical displays showing the Empire's shrinking territory. Red zones marked systems under Alliance control. Yellow zones showed contested areas where fighting continued. Green zones representing secure Valdari territory were vanishing from the map. They're running out of options, he told his staff. Their military is spread too thin. Their economy can't support this level of warfare indefinitely. Most importantly, their own people are starting to question whether the Empire is worth saving. The psychological impact of prolonged warfare was visible in intercepted Valdari communications. Soldiers complained about fighting enemies who appeared from nowhere and disappeared like ghosts. Commanders reported that human tactics made no sense according to accepted military doctrine. Politicians demanded explanations that their military leaders couldn't provide. President Hyojin addressed the Alliance Council. representatives of all species fighting against the Empire. Her words were broadcast to resistance movements throughout Valdari space. 3 years ago, they came to Earth and demanded our submission, she said. They told us we could serve or die. Today, we offer them the same choice. They can surrender and live with dignity, or they can continue fighting and face the consequences of their choice. The speech marked a fundamental shift in the war's objectives. Humanity had started by defending their home. Now they were offering to liberate the entire galaxy from Valdari rule. The Empire's worst nightmare was coming true. Their victims had become their judges. General Sang Min's forces finally broke through. Draktar's defenses using a combination of human determination and alien innovation. The planet's fall sent shockwaves throughout the remaining Valdari territories. If Draktar could fall, no world was safe. The victory celebration was brief. Intelligence reports indicated that the Empire was preparing one final gambit. They were recalling every ship from every system to mount a massive assault on Earth itself. The Valdari leadership had decided that destroying humanity's homeworld might break the rebellion's will to fight. Let them come, Admiral Sung Hwan said when he received the news. We've been preparing for this moment since the war began. Earth's defenses had evolved far beyond anything the Valdari had faced in their first assault. The planet was surrounded by layers of weapons platforms, shield generators, and sensor arrays that could detect enemies from light years away. More importantly, it was defended by an alliance that had learned to fight as one. But the real strength of Earth's defense wasn't technological. It was the knowledge that this world represented something the galaxy had never seen. Proof that freedom could defeat tyranny, that diversity could overcome uniformity, and that the combined will of free peoples was stronger than any empire. Chief Scientist, Yonsu prepared her most devastating creation, a weapon that could turn the Empire's own ships into bombs by overloading their fusion reactors. It was a terrible weapon that violated every treaty of civilized warfare, but the Valdari had written those treaties to protect themselves while they committed genocide against other species. They wanted war without rules. Yonsu told her team. They're about to learn what that really means. As the Empire's final fleet gathered for its ultimate assault, humanity and its allies prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Valdari had started this conflict believing they were conquering primitives. They were about to face the consequences of underestimating a species that had turned warfare into both science and art. The Empire had demanded submission and found war. Now they would learn that some wars can only end with the complete defeat of one side or the other. The Valdari had chosen this path when they refused humanity's offer of peace 3 years earlier. Now they would face the storm they had created. The final battle began at the edge of the Valdari home system, where ancient orbital fortresses had guarded the Empire's capital for 1,000 years. Supreme Commander Junho Park stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Humanity's Dawn, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for the war's last act. Behind him stretched ships from 47 different worlds. Human vessels flew alongside Kethan battleships, Zephyrian stealth destroyers, Morlock heavy cruisers, and craft from dozens of other species. Each ship carried crews who had learned to fight as brothers and sisters, united by their shared hatred of tyranny. All Alliance forces, this is Supreme Commander Park, Junho broadcast across the vast fleet. 3 years ago, the Empire came to our worlds demanding submission. Today we return their gift, but we offer something they never did: the choice between surrender with honor or destruction with shame. The Valdari response came from Emperor Velthar himself, broadcast from his throne world to every ship in both fleets. His voice carried the arrogance of a ruler who had never known defeat. Rebels and primitives, you dare approach the sacred heart of our empire? You will find only death here. Our ancestors conquered this galaxy when your species lived in caves. Today you will learn why we rule and you serve. Admiral Sujin Lee, commanding the assault fleet, smiled grimly at the Emperor's words. They still don't understand, she told her staff. They think this is about who's stronger. It's about who's right. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a newborn star. Valdari weapons designed to intimidate conquered populations met alliance shields designed by species who had learned from 3 years of desperate warfare. The Empire's opening barrage, which should have shattered the rebel fleet, barely scratched the alliance formations. General Daewon Kim led the ground assault forces that would determine the war's outcome. His mixed units of humans and aliens had trained for this moment, learning to coordinate attacks that used each species' unique abilities. They were ready to take the fight to the Empire's very doorstep. "Remember," Daewon told his commanders, "we're not here for revenge. We're here to end this war forever. Every enemy who surrenders lives to help rebuild what the Empire destroyed." The battle evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Ships fought in 3 dimensions while smaller craft darted between them like deadly insects. Weapons fired that existed in no military database, created by species fighting for their lives against an enemy that had never shown mercy. Chief Negotiator Ha Young Choi waited aboard a specially configured diplomatic vessel, ready to begin peace talks the moment the Empire showed any willingness to surrender. Her job was perhaps the most difficult of all, to offer mercy to an enemy that had never shown any. "The Alliance leadership has authorized me to accept surrender from any Valdari force at any level," she announced on all frequencies. "Individual ships, battle groups, entire fleets, or the Empire itself. All who surrender will be treated according to the laws of civilized warfare." The offer was revolutionary. In 1,000 years of conquest, the Valdari had never given their enemies the option of honorable surrender. They had demanded complete submission or total destruction. The Alliance was offering something the Empire couldn't understand: justice tempered with mercy. As the battle raged, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. On Keth Prime, the entire Valdari garrison had surrendered to local rebels. In the Outer Rim, 3 Imperial fleets had declared neutrality and were withdrawing from combat. The Empire that had seemed monolithic was cracking apart under pressure. Supreme Commander Junho watched his tactical displays as Alliance forces penetrated the Empire's final defensive lines. Human-designed weapons found weak points that Valdari engineers had never imagined. Keithan specialists disabled defense platforms from the inside. Zephyrian infiltrators struck at command centers, causing confusion that Alliance forces exploited ruthlessly. But the most devastating weapon was something the Empire had never faced: an enemy that fought with perfect coordination because they fought for a shared ideal. Every species in the Alliance understood what victory would mean: an end to tyranny for themselves and freedom for their children. The breakthrough came when Admiral Sujin's fleet penetrated the orbital defenses around the Valdari homeworld. For the first time in their history, the Empire's capital faced enemy warships in its own skies. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. "Imperial Fleet Command, this is Admiral Lee of the Alliance Navy," Sujin broadcast to the planet below. "Your orbital defenses have fallen. Your fleets are destroyed or surrendering. Emperor Velthar, you have 1 hour to open negotiations or face the consequences of your choice." The silence that followed stretched for exactly 37 minutes. Then, the impossible happened. The Emperor of the Valdari requested terms for surrender. Ha Young. Choi's diplomatic vessel approached the Imperial Palace under flags of truce that carried symbols from every species in the Alliance. Her staff included representatives from all 47 member worlds, a reminder that the Empire faced not just humanity, but the combined will of everyone they had oppressed. The surrender negotiations took place in the same throne room where Emperor Velthar had planned the conquest of Earth. Now he sat across from beings his people had considered inferior, asking for mercy he had never shown. "The terms are simple," Ha Young explained calmly. "Complete dissolution of the Imperial government, release of all conquered worlds, trial and punishment for war criminals according to galactic law, reparations for damaged worlds and displaced populations." "And if we refuse?" Velthar asked, his forearms trembling with suppressed rage. "Then this war continues until your empire is nothing but a memory," she replied. "We have 47 worlds united against you. You have perhaps a dozen left." The mathematics are simple. The Emperor's final question revealed how little he understood the forces that had destroyed his empire. "What do you want from us? What do humans gain from our defeat?" Ha Young's answer would be remembered in history books for 1,000 years. "We want what you never offered anyone: the simple right to live free. The right to govern ourselves, to raise our children in peace, and to dream of futures you can't control. We don't want to rule you. We just want you to stop ruling us." The formal surrender was signed by representatives of every species in the Alliance and broadcast throughout the galaxy. The Valdari Empire, which had ruled 17 star systems for over a millennium, ceased to exist in the space of a single document. General Day Wan oversaw the occupation forces that maintained order, while new governments formed on liberated worlds. His soldiers, representing dozens of species, became symbols of the new galaxy, beings who had learned to work together despite their differences. The Empire fell because it tried to make everyone the same, he observed to his staff. The Alliance succeeded because we celebrated our differences and used them as strengths. Supreme Commander Junho addressed the galaxy from the former Imperial Throne World, now renamed Liberation Prime. His words reached every species that had ever lived under Valdari rule. The war is over. Tyranny has fallen. But our work has just begun. We must build something better than what we destroyed. We must prove that free peoples can govern themselves with wisdom and justice. We must ensure that no empire like the Valdari can ever rise again. The trials of Valdari war criminals proceeded according to laws written by the Alliance, incorporating legal traditions from every member species. Justice was served, but it was justice tempered with mercy for those who had been forced to serve an evil system. Emperor Velthar himself faced a tribunal representing all the worlds his empire had conquered. His sentence was exile to a remote world where he could live out his remaining years in isolation, forced to contemplate the cost of his ambitions. As the Alliance fleets dispersed to their home worlds, they carried with them something precious, proof that freedom could triumph over oppression, that diversity could overcome uniformity, and that beings who fought for justice were stronger than any tyrant. The Empire had demanded submission and found war. They had expected easy conquest and discovered that some species would rather die than kneel. In the end, they learned that the greatest force in the galaxy was not the biggest weapon or the strongest fleet, but the simple human refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. Earth's children had taken their first steps into a galaxy where they would never have to stand alone again. 3 months after the first battle, humanity did something the Valdari Empire had never experienced in 1,000 years of conquest. They took the war to the enemy. Captain Jae-sung Kang stood on the bridge of the deep space reconnaissance ship Vengeance, watching the distant lights of a Valdari military outpost. His ship was small and fast, built for missions that required more courage than common sense. Today's mission definitely qualified. Target confirmed, reported his navigator. Valdari Supply Depot at Kepler Station. Minimal defenses, maximum supplies. The station orbited a gas giant in a system the Valdari considered safe. No enemy had ever penetrated this deep into their territory. They were about to learn that humans didn't respect the concept of safe territory. Back on Earth, xenobiologist Sun-Hee Lee had spent months studying captured Valdari equipment and prisoners. Her breakthrough came when she decoded their communication protocols. Their language is mathematical, she explained to Admiral Park. Once you understand the pattern, you can predict their tactical responses. This knowledge was now being put to deadly use. Human strike forces appeared in Valdari systems like ghosts, hitting supply lines and military installations with surgical precision. They left behind messages written in perfect Valdari script. You wanted war. Now you have it. Commander Chungmin Park led the Special Forces unit known as the Solar Reapers. His team specialized in boarding actions against Valdari ships. They had learned that aliens who conquered through overwhelming firepower were vulnerable to enemies who got close enough to use knives. Remember, we're not here to fight fair, Changmin told his soldiers as they prepared to assault another enemy vessel. We're here to win. The Valdari had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory. Human tactics proved them wrong. When human fighters couldn't penetrate alien shields, they used the shield's own energy against them. When alien weapons were too powerful to face directly, humans attacked from directions the aliens never expected. Naval architect Yoon-ji Kim worked around the clock designing new ships for humanity's growing war fleet. Her designs looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. Some were built specifically for ramming. Others were designed to explode after delivering their payloads. All of them reflected the human approach to warfare. If you can't outfight your enemy, outthink them. The Valdari build ships like they build everything, Yoon-ji explained to her design team. Big, powerful, and predictable. We build ships that make them ask questions they don't know how to answer. Her newest creation was the Phantom-class stealth destroyer. It was invisible to Valdari sensors and armed with weapons that could cripple ships 10 times its size. More importantly, it was fast enough to escape before the enemy could respond. The psychological impact of human raids began showing in intercepted Valdari communications. Their military commanders reported strange phenomena, ships that appeared from nowhere, attacks that came from impossible directions, and an enemy that seemed to know their plans before they made them. Captain Jae-sung guided the Vengeance through the asteroid field surrounding Kepler Station. His ship's hull was painted with materials that absorbed sensor sweeps, making it virtually invisible. The Valdari guards were watching for massive battle fleets, not a single small ship filled with very determined humans, launching penetration teams, he announced calmly. Dozens of small pods ejected from the Vengeance, each one carrying a team of specialists. They moved through space like silent bullets, aimed at specific weak points in the station's structure. The Valdari wouldn't know they were under attack until it was too late. Changmin Park's pod penetrated the station's hull near its main reactor. His team moved through the corridors like deadly shadows, using their knowledge of Valdari psychology against the defenders. Aliens who had conquered through intimidation found themselves terrified by enemies who seemed to materialize from the darkness. The attack was over in 30 minutes. The station's weapons were destroyed, its supplies captured or destroyed, and its communication array turned into a broadcasting station for human propaganda. By the time Valdari reinforcements arrived, the human forces had vanished like smoke. Similar raids were happening throughout Valdari space. Human forces appeared in systems that had been secure for centuries, struck with devastating efficiency, and disappeared before the enemy could mount an effective response. Each attack was carefully planned to inflict maximum psychological damage with minimum risk to human forces. The Empire's response was predictable and ineffective. They sent larger fleets to guard important installations, weakening their offensive capabilities. They implemented new security protocols that slowed their operations to a crawl. Most importantly, they began to doubt their own invincibility. Sun Hee Lee's intelligence networks brought back disturbing news for the Valdari leadership. Conquered species throughout their empire were beginning to question whether their masters were truly unbeatable. Whispers of human victory spread faster than official denials. They're losing control of their own narrative, Sun Hee reported to Earth's command staff. Their entire empire is built on the myth of Valdari superiority. We're proving that myth is false. The raids had another more important purpose. Every captured Valdari facility provided intelligence about the Empire's structure and weaknesses. Human analysts discovered that the Valdari military was far more dependent on centralized command than they had realized. Yoon-ji Kim used this intelligence to design specialized electronic warfare ships. These vessels could disrupt Valdari communications across entire star systems, leaving their fleets confused and uncoordinated. When combined with human strike tactics, the effect was devastating. The war's momentum began to shift. Instead of defending Earth, human forces were attacking Valdari positions throughout their territory. The Empire found itself reacting to human initiatives instead of pursuing their own objectives. Admiral Hyun-woo Park studied the strategic situation with growing satisfaction. They came to our solar system expecting an easy conquest, he told his staff. Now they're fighting for their lives in their own territory, but the human leadership knew their successes came with a price. Every raid required resources they could barely afford. Every victory brought the risk of Valdari retaliation against Earth itself. Most importantly, every battle cost them soldiers and ships they couldn't easily replace. Captain Jae-sung's latest mission took him deeper into Valdari space than any human had ever traveled. His target was a communications relay that coordinated Empire military operations across 3 star systems. Destroying it would blind their enemies for weeks. As the Vengeance approached its target, Jae-sung reflected on how much had changed since the war began. Humans had gone from a single world defending itself to a spacefaring civilization capable of striking anywhere in the galaxy. The Valdari had created their own worst nightmare, an enemy that learned from every battle and adapted faster than they could respond. The relay station exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking with it the Valdari's ability to coordinate their forces across a significant portion of their territory. As the Vengeance escaped into hyperspace, its crew knew they had just delivered another message to the Empire. Humanity was no longer hiding behind its walls, waiting for the enemy to come. They were the hunters now, and the galaxy was their hunting ground. 1 year into the war, the Valdari Empire made a decision that would prove to be their greatest mistake. They committed the Second Imperial Fleet to the human conflict, pulling ships from garrison duties across their territory. The Empire's leaders believed that overwhelming force would finally crush human resistance. Admiral Wu Jin Choi received the intelligence report while commanding the Second Earth Fleet from his flagship. The massive Valdari Armada was 3 times larger than their original invasion force. On paper, it should have been enough to sterilize every human world. They still don't understand, Wu Jin said to his tactical officer. They think this is about firepower. The Valdari's rigid military doctrine had served them well against species that fought conventional wars. But humans had never been conventional. Every battle taught them new ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Director Mi Young-seo had spent months building networks throughout Valdari space. Her Human Intelligence Operations Division had done something unprecedented. They had convinced other species to actively resist their Valdari overlords. The Empire suddenly found themselves fighting rebellions on dozens of worlds. The key was understanding their psychology, Mi Young explained to Earth's leadership. Most conquered species submitted because they saw no alternative. We gave them alternatives. On the industrial world of Keth Prime, the native Kethans had built Valdari warships for 3 centuries. Now they were using their knowledge of those ships to help human sabotage teams find critical weak points. What had once been the Empire's greatest shipyard was becoming a liability. General Kyung-ho Kim commanded human ground forces on liberated worlds, but his job was different from any general in human history. He wasn't just fighting enemy soldiers. He was teaching entire species how to fight for their freedom. Every world we free becomes a source of intelligence and recruits, he reported to Earth Command. The Valdari created their empire by breaking the spirits of other species. We're showing those species that broken spirits can be healed. The war had evolved beyond a simple conflict between humans and Valdari. It was becoming a galaxy-wide revolution against tyranny, with humanity providing the leadership and inspiration other species needed to break their chains. Diplomat Nari Park worked with alien resistance movements throughout Valdari space. Her job required incredible courage, as she traveled to worlds where discovery meant death. But the results justified the risks. Each species brings something unique to the fight, she reported from the underground city on Veltar. The Kethans understand Valdari technology. The Zephyrians have natural stealth abilities. The Morlocks are immune to most Valdari weapons. Together, we're becoming something the Empire can't defeat. The Second Imperial Fleet arrived at Earth's solar system expecting to face desperate defenders. Instead, they found a coordinated alliance of species that had learned to fight as one. Human tactics combined with alien abilities created combinations the Valdari had never imagined. Fleet Admiral Xiong Huan Li commanded the defense from his position on the rebuilt orbital fortress. His forces now included ships and crews from a dozen different worlds, all united by their hatred of Valdari oppression. All allied units, this is Admiral Li, he broadcast on all frequencies. The Empire has sent their second-best fleet to destroy us. Let's show them why their first fleet failed. The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point of the war. Human ships used their speed and unpredictability to confuse Valdari targeting systems. Keithan vessels struck with perfect knowledge of enemy weak points. Zephyrian stealth ships appeared and disappeared like deadly ghosts. Morlock heavy cruisers absorbed tremendous damage while delivering devastating return fire. But the most important element was something the Valdari couldn't understand. The Alliance fought with unity of purpose that their rigid empire could never achieve. Every species brought their best capabilities, and human leadership coordinated them into a force that was greater than the sum of its parts. The Second Imperial Fleet lasted 8 hours before its commander requested permission to retreat. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. The fleet was ordered to fight to the death rather than face the shame of defeat. That order cost the Valdari more than ships and soldiers. Throughout their empire, species that had served loyally for generations began to question leaders who would sacrifice entire fleets rather than admit failure. The myth of Valdari wisdom died along with the myth of Valdari invincibility. Mi Young-seo's intelligence networks reported uprisings on 37 worlds within a month of the battle. The Empire's response was predictable. They pulled more fleets from garrison duty to crush the rebellions. This only created more opportunities for human-led forces to strike at weakened positions. They're trapped in a cycle they can't escape, Mi Young explained to the Earth Council. Every ship they send against us is a ship that's not protecting their territory. Every rebellion they crush creates 10 more. They're losing control of their own empire. The war's scope had grown beyond anyone's imagination. What started as the conquest of a single world had become a conflict spanning hundreds of star systems. The Valdari Empire, which had seemed invincible just 2 years earlier, was beginning to fragment under the pressure of fighting too many enemies in too many places. General Kyung-ho Kim's liberation forces had freed 17 worlds and were preparing to assault their 18th. Each victory brought more alien allies and more intelligence about Valdari operations. More importantly, each victory proved that the Empire could be defeated. The Valdari made a fundamental error, Kyung-ho reported to Earth Command. They built their empire on fear and submission. But once people stop being afraid, submission becomes impossible. The Empire's leadership finally began to understand the scope of their problem. They weren't fighting a single species anymore. They were fighting a revolution that threatened the very foundation of their civilization. Their response was to commit even more resources to the conflict, weakening their position throughout the galaxy. Admiral Woo Jin Choi prepared his forces for the next phase of the war. Intelligence reports indicated that the Valdari were gathering their third Imperial fleet for another assault on Earth. But the humans and their allies were ready. Let them come, Woo Jin told his officers. Every fleet they send makes them weaker everywhere else. Every battle they fight teaches us more about how to beat them. They wanted to conquer us quickly and move on to their next target. Instead, we've become the war that consumes their entire empire. The Valdari had indeed created their own nightmare. They had awakened not just human resistance, but the resistance of every species they had ever conquered. The empire that had ruled through fear now faced enemies who were no longer afraid. Nari Park's latest diplomatic success brought the aquatic titles into the alliance. Their underwater cities had been hidden from Valdari sensors for decades, providing perfect bases for strike operations. With their addition, the alliance now included representatives from 23 different species. The Empire called us inferior, Nari said in her report to Earth. But they never understood that our diversity is our strength. Every species they conquered adds to our capabilities. Every world they oppressed becomes a potential ally. As the second year of war ended, the strategic situation had completely reversed. The Valdari Empire was fighting for survival against a coalition that grew stronger with every battle. Humanity had started as the defenders of a single world and had become the leaders of the largest rebellion in galactic history. The Empire had demanded submission and found war. Now they were discovering that some wars, once started, could never be stopped until one side ceased to exist. The 72 hours passed like a held breath. When the deadline arrived, the Valdari fleet moved with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. 12 more massive warships had joined the first, their weapons charging with energy that made space itself shimmer. Admiral Hyunwoo Park watched from his command station as the enemy ships descended toward Earth's orbital defenses. The Valdari had done this before on 16 other worlds. Their tactics were simple and effective. Destroy all military resistance in the first hour, then demand complete surrender from the survivors. Enemy ships are targeting our defense platforms, reported So-Young Kim, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. They expect to eliminate our defenses in a single strike. Let them think that, Hyunwoo replied calmly. All stations implement Ghost Protocol. Make them work for every target. Throughout the solar system, human forces began their first surprise. The defense grid the Valdari could see around Earth was just the beginning. Hidden weapons platforms activated in the asteroid belt. Stealth satellites that had been drifting silent for months suddenly came online. Even the mining operations on distant moons revealed themselves to be armed fortresses. On Luna, Commander Hee-Jin Park watched her screens as Valdari fighters swept toward the moon's surface. Activate the tunnel network, she ordered. Show them what humans do when we have time to prepare. The lunar surface erupted with hidden weapon ports. Railgun batteries that had been disguised as mining equipment opened fire. The Valdari fighters, expecting easy targets, found themselves flying into a maze of defensive fire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. In the asteroid belt, Dong-Hyun Kim grinned as his converted mining ships engaged the enemy. These Valdari think big ships mean victory. he told his crews over the radio. Let's teach them about human creativity. His ships were small and ugly compared to the elegant Valdari vessels, but they moved like angry hornets. Mining lasers became weapons. Ore haulers became missile platforms. Even the simple cargo containers were filled with explosives and turned into guided bombs. Lieutenant Min Ho-yoon led his stealth squadron through the chaos of the first battle. His small fighters were invisible to Valdari sensors, letting them strike without warning. "Ghost Hawk Squadron, remember your training," he radioed to his pilots. "Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before they know what happened." The Valdari expected human ships to fight like every other species they had conquered. Formal battle lines, predictable tactics, and surrender after the first major losses. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Captain Taemin Lee commanded the experimental warship Indomitable from the center of the battle. His ship was smaller than any Valdari vessel, but it moved like nothing they had ever seen. The new fusion drives Ji-hai Choi had designed allowed impossible maneuvers. "Enemy battleship is targeting us," his weapons officer reported. "They're charging some kind of planet-killer weapon." "Perfect," Taemin said with a grim smile. "Make them think they have us. Then show them why humans are dangerous." The Indomitable seemed to flee from the massive Valdari battleship, drawing it away from the main battle. The alien ship followed, confident in its superiority. Its captain probably thought this would be the easiest kill of the day. Instead, the Indomitable suddenly reversed course and accelerated directly at the enemy vessel. Every human weapon fired at once while the ship spun and twisted through the aliens' defensive fire. At the last second, the human ship veered away, but not before launching a spread of nuclear missiles at point-blank range. The Valdari battleship's shields flared and died. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull, as human weapons found weak points that had never been tested in real combat. Intelligence officer Yuri Song had been studying Valdari communications for months. Now she put that knowledge to work. "Their command structure is very rigid," she reported to Admiral Park. "If we can disrupt their communications, their ships won't know how to adapt to our tactics." "Do it," Yunwoo ordered. Across the solar system, human jammers began broadcasting on Valdari frequencies. The alien fleet, accustomed to precise coordination, suddenly found their ships fighting as isolated units. Chief Engineer Ji-hai Choi watched the battle from her position in the engineering section. Her fusion drives were performing beyond specifications, but she noticed something else in the combat data. "Admiral, the Valdari weapons are powerful but inflexible. They can't adjust their fire patterns quickly. If our ships keep changing their movement profiles, the enemy targeting systems can't keep up." The insight spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Ships began using random acceleration patterns, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. What had started as a massacre became a chaotic melee where human unpredictability proved more valuable than alien firepower. The Valdari had expected to lose, perhaps one or two ships in the conquest of Earth. Instead, after 6 hours of combat, 4 of their massive warships were destroyed or crippled. Their fighters were being systematically hunted by human stealth squadrons. Their ground assault forces couldn't land because every potential landing zone was protected by hidden defenses. Ambassador Krelthan found himself in the impossible position of reporting failure to his superiors. The humans were not fighting like any species the Empire had encountered before. They used their own ships as weapons, ramming Valdari vessels when their ammunition ran low. They turned civilian craft into mobile bombs. They even used their space debris as improvised projectiles. "These humans fight without honor," complained one of his ship captains. "They do not follow proper combat protocols. They fight to win," Krelthan corrected grimly. "Perhaps we have underestimated this species." As the first day of battle ended, the Valdari fleet retreated to the outer edge of the solar system to regroup. They had expected swift victory and found prolonged warfare. They had expected submission and found defiance backed by lethal creativity. But the humans knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Park looked at his casualty reports and felt the weight of command. They had hurt the enemy, but the Valdari could bring more ships. "Many more ships, what are our losses?" he asked quietly. 18 ships destroyed, 34 damaged, So Young reported. "But we destroyed 4 of their capital ships and over 100 fighters." It was a victory, but victories in wars of survival were measured differently than victories in ordinary conflicts. The question wasn't whether they could win battles, but whether they could win the war that would surely follow. In the darkness between planets, both fleets prepared for what would come next. The Valdari called for reinforcements and tried to understand an enemy that didn't follow their rules. The humans counted their dead and planned their next move. The Empire had demanded submission. Instead, they had found humans who preferred death to slavery. Now they would learn what that really meant. The massive Valdari warship appeared above Earth like a dark storm cloud. Its black hull stretched for miles, covered in weapons that could turn entire cities to glass. For 3 days it sat there in silence, watching, waiting. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood in the command center of Earth's orbital station, staring at the alien vessel through the main screen. His weathered hands gripped the rail as alarms buzzed around him. 20 years in the Korean Navy had taught him to read danger, and this ship radiated it like heat from a furnace. "Sir, they're sending a message," called out Lieutenant So-Young Kim from her station. Her fingers danced over the controls as strange symbols filled the screen. "The computer is translating now." The symbols shifted into words that made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. The message was simple and direct. The Valdari Empire claimed ownership of Earth and all human colonies. Humanity had 72 hours to surrender completely. Any resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. "They want an answer within 3 days," So-Young said quietly. "Submit or die." Captain Tae-min Lee entered the command center, his young face grim. Behind him walked Chief Engineer Ji-Hae Choi, oil stains on her uniform from working on the new fusion drives. They had both seen the message. 17 star systems, Tae-min said, shaking his head. They've conquered 17 different worlds. Every species submitted within hours of getting this message. Ji-Hae pulled up data on her tablet. Their technology is advanced but not impossible to understand. These fusion drives we've been developing are actually more efficient than theirs. They just have bigger ships. Hyunwoo turned to face his officers. These were good people, smart people who had worked their entire lives to protect Earth. The Valdari expected them to simply give up everything without a fight. "What do our allies say?" he asked. "The Mars colonies are ready to fight," So-Young reported. "The lunar bases are preparing their defenses. The asteroid miners are asking for weapons. And the politicians? They want to negotiate." Hyunwoo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Negotiate with someone who offers slavery or death? What exactly would we negotiate?" The Valdari ship began broadcasting again. This time the message included images of other worlds they had conquered. Beautiful planets with strange creatures that had once built cities and dreamed of the stars. Now they worked in mines and factories serving their Valdari masters. "They think this will scare us," Ji-Hae said, studying the images. "They don't understand humans very well." "What do you mean?" Tae-min asked. "Look at these other species. They surrendered because they were civilized. They thought logically about the costs of resistance. But humans?" She smiled grimly. "We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We're very good at war." The command center fell quiet as everyone processed this. Hyunwoo had fought in 3 different conflicts during his naval career. He had seen humans do impossible things when their backs were against the wall. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Valdari ship," So-Young announced. The main screen flickered, showing a tall alien with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into perfect English. "I am Ambassador Krelthan of the Valdari Empire. You have received our terms. Your species will submit and serve, or your species will be eliminated. This is not negotiable. This is fact." Hyunwoo stepped forward, straightening his uniform. "This is Admiral Hyunwoo Park of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your message." "Good. You will announce your surrender immediately. Your military forces will stand down. Your leaders will report to our collection centers for processing. I have a different message for you, Ambassador." The alien tilted its head, clearly not expecting resistance. "Speak quickly. Our patience is limited." Hyunwoo looked directly into the alien's black eyes. "Come and take it." For a moment, Krelthan seemed confused. "Explain this phrase." "It means we will not surrender. It means if you want our world, you will have to fight for every inch of it. It means we choose war." The ambassador's 4 arms gestured in what might have been surprise. "This is illogical. You have seen what happened to other worlds that resisted. You cannot win." "Maybe not," Hyunwoo admitted, "but we can make you pay a price you never expected." The transmission ended abruptly. The Valdari ship remained in orbit, but something had changed. Weapons began emerging from hidden ports along its hull. "All stations, this is Admiral Park," Hyun-woo announced over the general communication system. "Humanity has chosen to fight. Begin Operation Defiance. All military units are authorized to engage any Valdari forces that enter our territory." Throughout the solar system, human colonies and military bases came alive. On Mars, Colonel Min Ho-yoon began launching stealth fighters toward the outer planets. On Luna, Commander Hye-jin Park activated defense systems that had been hidden for decades. In the asteroid belt, mining boss Dong-hyun Kim started converting his industrial equipment into weapons. Intelligence officer Yuri Song worked frantically to analyze Valdari communications. "They're calling for reinforcements," she reported, "but they seem confused by our response. Their tactical computers don't know how to handle a species that chooses certain death over surrender." Ji-hai was already working on modifications to their weapon systems. "Their shields are strong, but they're designed to stop energy weapons. Our railguns might punch right through them." "How many ships can we field?" Hyun-woo asked. 47 combat vessels, plus about 200 converted civilian ships," Taemin answered. "Not nearly enough to match their firepower." "Then we don't try to match it. We outthink it." The Valdari had made a crucial error. They assumed humans would react like every other species they had encountered. They expected logic, calculation, and eventual submission. Instead, they found a species that had turned warfare into an art form through centuries of conflict. As the deadline approached, humanity prepared for the most important battle in its history. Not just for survival, but for the right to remain free. The Valdari wanted submission and expected to find weakness. Instead, they were about to discover what happened when humans were given a choice between slavery and war. The answer was always the same: war.